There comes a moment when the life that once gave you direction begins to feel strangely unfamiliar. The career you worked to build, the roles you learned to perform, the expectations you tried to fulfill, none of them may be objectively wrong, yet they no longer speak to the deepest part of you. Before you go, if you're looking for a simple way to reduce stress and find more inner peace, I have something for you. Check out the ebook, The SIM Method, 5 minutes a day for inner peace and mental clarity. It only takes 5 minutes a day and can help you build a calmer, clearer mind. The link is in the first pinned comment, and if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe to The Trauma of Being for more content like this. What once felt like progress now feels like repetition. What once looked like success begins to resemble a carefully constructed identity that you have outgrown. According to Carl Jung, this discomfort is not evidence that your life has failed. It may be the first sign that your soul is asking you to live differently. The first half of life is usually devoted to establishing ourselves in the external world. We search for security, recognition, relationship status, and a place within society. We develop a persona, a social face that helps us belong, achieve, and survive. But the qualities that make this stage successful cannot guide us forever. Eventually, the questions change. It is no longer enough to ask what you should accomplish, what others expect from you, or how you can prove your worth. A deeper question begins to emerge from within. Who are you beneath everything you were taught to become? For Jung, entering the second half of life meant turning toward the parts of the psyche that had been neglected. The unlived dreams, hidden fears, rejected emotions, and forgotten possibilities do not disappear simply because we ignore them. They wait in the unconscious, often returning through emptiness, restlessness, regret, or the unsettling feeling that something essential is missing. This inner disturbance is commonly called a midlife crisis, but Jung saw it as something far more meaningful, an invitation to begin the difficult yet liberating process of individuation. Before you enter the second half of your life, remember that you are not being asked to destroy everything you have built. You are being asked to discover whether it still reflects who you are becoming. The years ahead do not have to be a slow retreat into routine. They can become the most conscious, authentic, and meaningful chapter of your existence, but only if you are willing to release what has become false, face what you have avoided, and listen to the quiet voice within that has been waiting for you all along. 1. The life you built is not the person you truly are. Most people spend the first half of life constructing an identity before they ever seriously question whether that identity belongs to them. They choose a profession, form relationships, accept responsibilities, pursue recognition, and learn how to behave in ways that bring security and approval. Slowly, these choices create a recognizable life, one that can be explained to others through achievements, possessions, duties, and social roles. Yet beneath this carefully organized structure, a quieter personality may remain unexplored. The life you successfully built can represent everything you learned to become without revealing everything you truly are. Carl Jung understood that this external construction is necessary. A young person must develop an ego, acquire skills, establish independence, and discover how to function in society. Without a stable identity, it would be difficult to make decisions or create a place in the world. The problem begins when this temporary structure is mistaken for the entirety of the self. A profession may describe what you do, but it cannot contain the full meaning of who you are. A social role may organize your responsibilities, but it cannot express every hidden need, contradiction, gift, and possibility living within you. From childhood onward, people receive countless messages about who they are expected to become. Families communicate which emotions are acceptable. Communities establish definitions of respectability, and society rewards certain forms of success while dismissing others. To remain connected and protected, the individual adapts. Certain qualities are displayed because they receive approval, while others are hidden because they create discomfort. Over time, adaptation becomes habit, and habit becomes identity. Eventually, a person may no longer recognize the difference between an authentic desire and an expectation repeated for many years. Jung used the concept of the persona to describe the social face we present to the world. The persona is not necessarily false or harmful. It helps us communicate, participate in society, and fulfill different responsibilities. We need it when acting as professionals, parents, friends, partners, and members of a community. But danger appears when we become completely identified with this social mask. When the persona occupies the entire personality, we begin protecting an image rather than developing a soul. We may appear confident while feeling internally uncertain, appear fulfilled while carrying emptiness, or appear successful while privately wondering why success no longer satisfies us. This conflict often remains invisible during the busiest years of life. Constant activity can prevent deeper questions from reaching consciousness. There are deadlines to meet, people to support, expectations to fulfill, and problems demanding immediate attention. Movement creates the impression of meaning because there is rarely enough silence to examine where that movement is leading. But when routines become predictable or external goals are finally achieved, a strange realization can emerge. You may have reached the destination that was supposed to fulfill you, only to discover that an essential part of you never participated in the journey. That realization can feel unsettling because it threatens the story upon which your life has been organized. If the career is not your complete identity, who are you without its title? If other people's admiration is no longer enough, what do you genuinely value? If the dreams you pursued were inherited from family or culture, what would you have chosen in their absence? These questions are uncomfortable because they remove familiar definitions without immediately offering replacements. Yet Jungian psychology suggests that such uncertainty can be the beginning of transformation rather than evidence that something has gone wrong. The deeper self rarely announces itself through a clear and convenient instruction. It may first appear as restlessness, recurring dreams, forgotten interests, unexpected emotions, or an attraction toward a life that seems different from the one you planned. You might remember qualities you abandoned because they appeared impractical, childish, weak, or socially unacceptable. Creativity, tenderness, solitude, spirituality, curiosity, and courage may return after years of neglect. These signals do not always demand a dramatic external change. Often they ask you to begin an honest inner conversation about what has been excluded from your conscious identity. Recognizing that you are more than the life you built does not mean rejecting your history. Your responsibilities, accomplishments, sacrifices, and relationships remain meaningful. The task is not to declare the first half of life a mistake, but to understand its limitations. Everything you built may have carried you to the threshold of a deeper stage. The structure was necessary, but it was never meant to become a prison. Maturity begins when you can appreciate the person you needed to be while making room for the person who is now asking to emerge. This transition requires courage because authenticity can disrupt familiar patterns. When you stop living exclusively through your established role, others may not immediately understand you. People who benefited from your predictability may prefer the previous version of you. Even your own mind may resist change because the familiar, however limiting, feels safer than the unknown. But continuing to perform an identity that has lost its inner meaning produces a deeper conflict. The cost of preserving appearances may eventually become greater than the fear of discovering who you are beyond them. The second half of life begins psychologically when you stop asking only, "What does the world require from me?" and begin asking, "What is life trying to reveal through me?" This does not eliminate duty or ambition. It places them within a larger search for meaning. You become capable of examining your choices without condemning your past, and of changing direction without treating change as failure. The person you truly are is not hiding in a single role or perfect answer. That person emerges gradually whenever you release borrowed expectations, listen honestly to your inner life, and allow your outer existence to reflect the truth developing within you. 2. Stop chasing approval and start listening to yourself. The desire for approval begins as something natural. From childhood, acceptance provides safety, belonging, and reassurance that we have a place among others. We learn which behaviors earn affection, which opinions receive praise, and which parts of our personality create disapproval. Gradually, we begin adjusting ourselves before anyone even asks. What started as a way to maintain connection can become an unconscious pattern in which every important choice is measured against the possible reactions of other people. By adulthood, this pattern may be so familiar that it no longer feels like self-betrayal. You accept responsibilities you never wanted, remain silent when something violates your values, and follow paths that look respectable from the outside. You may call this maturity, kindness, or loyalty, even when it is driven by fear. The central question is no longer whether a decision feels true, but whether it will disappoint someone. When approval becomes the measure of a good life, the individual slowly loses contact with the inner authority needed to direct that life. In Jungian psychology, the persona represents the identity we develop to function in the social world. It allows us to adapt to different environments, fulfill responsibilities, and communicate with others. Yet when we depend too heavily on approval, the persona stops being a useful social instrument and becomes a psychological prison. We begin living for the preservation of our image. Instead of asking what we believe, we ask what belief will make us acceptable. Instead of expressing what we feel, we display the emotion most likely to keep everyone comfortable. This dependence is especially difficult to recognize because approval can resemble love. Praise, agreement, and admiration create a temporary feeling of worth, but that feeling depends on continued performance. You must remain helpful, agreeable, successful, calm, or strong enough to protect the identity others expect from you. The moment you change, disagree, establish a boundary, or choose an unfamiliar direction, their approval may weaken. If your self-worth depends upon their response, even a small expression of disappointment can feel like proof that you have done something wrong. But disappointing someone does not automatically mean that you have betrayed them. Sometimes it means that you have stopped betraying yourself. This distinction becomes essential in the second half of life, when maintaining every old expectation demands increasingly greater sacrifices. The energy once used to achieve acceptance begins to feel wasted on endless explanations and performances. An inner voice starts questioning why peace must always depend on pleasing others. That voice may initially be quiet, but it carries information that the socially adapted personality has ignored for years. Listening to yourself requires more than following every impulse or emotion. Jung did not equate authenticity with acting without responsibility. The unconscious contains wisdom, but it also contains fear, unresolved conflict, projection, and contradiction. Genuine self-listening therefore demands reflection. You must learn to distinguish between a temporary reaction and a deeper conviction, between rebellion for its own sake and a necessary movement toward growth. Inner authority is not impulsiveness. It is the ability to examine your motives honestly and accept responsibility for the choices that follow. Silence can become an important part of this process because constant external noise prevents inner perception. When every uncertainty is immediately taken to friends, family, experts, or public opinion, other voices enter before your own has been heard. Advice may be valuable, but it cannot replace self-knowledge. There are decisions for which no amount of approval can provide certainty. You may need to sit with discomfort long enough to discover what remains true when praise, criticism, expectation, and comparison are temporarily removed. As you develop this inner relationship, you may notice how often fear has been disguising itself as consideration. You may have called yourself flexible when you were afraid to disagree, patient when you were afraid to leave an unhealthy pattern, or selfless when you were afraid of being judged. Recognizing this does not require condemning yourself. These strategies may once have protected your sense of belonging, but what protected you in one stage of life can restrict you in another, and maturity involves knowing when an old adaptation has completed its purpose. Choosing authenticity will not make you indifferent to other people. In fact, it can create more honest relationships because your kindness is no longer offered as payment for acceptance. You can support someone without surrendering your judgment, listen without automatically agreeing, and care without permitting another person to define your identity. Some relationships may become stronger when the real you is finally present. Others may resist the change because they were organized around your compliance. both outcomes reveal something important about the quality of the connection. Eventually, freedom begins when approval becomes welcome, but no longer necessary. Compliments may still bring pleasure, and criticism may still create discomfort, but neither determines who you are. You learn to consult your conscience before consulting the crowd, and to measure choices by their alignment with your values rather than their popularity. The goal is not to silence the world, but to stop allowing it to silence you. When external validation loses its power, your individuality can finally emerge, not as a performance designed to impress others, but as a life shaped from the inside outward. 3. Everything you rejected about yourself is waiting for you. Every personality is shaped not only by what it accepts, but also by what it excludes. As you learned how to gain love, security, and approval, you discovered that certain qualities were welcome, while others were discouraged. Perhaps confidence was mistaken for arrogance, sensitivity for weakness, anger for disobedience, or ambition for selfishness. To preserve your place in the world, you pushed these qualities out of conscious awareness. But what you rejected did not cease to exist. It simply moved into the psychological territory Jung called the shadow. The shadow contains the emotions, impulses, abilities, and desires that the conscious personality refuses to recognize as its own. Although people often associate it exclusively with destructive qualities, it can also contain courage, creativity, tenderness, independence, and personal power. A quiet person may have buried the ability to speak with authority. Someone who is always responsible may have rejected spontaneity and play. A person devoted to pleasing others may have hidden the healthy aggression required to establish boundaries. The shadow therefore holds not only what frightens you, but also what could complete you. During the first half of life, the demands of the external world can keep these neglected qualities beneath the surface. Work, family, social obligations, and ambition provide a clear structure through which the conscious identity can operate. Yet as life progresses, that structure may become less effective at containing everything that has been excluded. Old emotions return without an obvious explanation. Forgotten memories acquire new significance, reactions become stronger, and the person may feel disturbed by qualities in others that secretly reflect something unacknowledged within themselves. This is where projection becomes important. When the conscious mind cannot accept a quality as its own, it often perceives that quality more intensely in someone else. You may condemn another person's selfishness while refusing to admit that you also need to prioritize yourself. You may feel threatened by someone's confidence because you abandoned your own authority long ago. You may idealize a free-spirited person because they embody a life you never permitted yourself to pursue. The emotional intensity of these reactions can reveal where the shadow is attempting to enter consciousness. Projection does not mean that every judgment is false or that harmful behavior should be excused. It means that your reaction may contain information about your own inner life in addition to what is happening externally. Instead of asking only what is wrong with the other person, you can ask why their behavior affects you so deeply. What quality do they represent? Where does that same potential exist within you? Such questions redirect attention from blame towards self-knowledge, allowing an unconscious pattern to become something you can examine consciously. Meeting the shadow can initially feel threatening because it challenges the identity you have worked to maintain. If you have always considered yourself calm, acknowledging anger may seem like a moral failure. If you have built your identity around strength, admitting vulnerability may feel dangerous. Yet denial does not eliminate these qualities. It only removes conscious responsibility for them. An emotion that is recognized can be understood and directed. An emotion that remains unconscious may influence decisions, relationships, and reactions without your awareness. Shadow work is not permission to act on every impulse. Integration means developing a conscious relationship with rejected qualities so that they no longer control you indirectly. Anger can become the strength to defend a boundary without becoming cruelty. Ambition can become purposeful action without turning into domination. Vulnerability can deepen connection without requiring helplessness. Even fear can become a source of caution and self-understanding. The objective is not to surrender control to the shadow, but to recover the energy trapped inside it. This process requires compassion because many rejected qualities were buried for understandable reasons. They may have been unacceptable in your childhood environment or incompatible with the role you needed to perform. Blaming yourself for this adaptation only creates another form of rejection. Instead, you can recognize that the earlier version of you was trying to remain safe and connected. What was once necessary, however, may no longer be appropriate. The mature psyche can welcome what the younger personality lacked the freedom or strength to hold. As integration continues, inner conflict begins to change. You no longer need to maintain a perfect image of yourself by denying every contradiction. You can be generous while acknowledging your limits, courageous while recognizing fear, and disciplined while making room for rest. This broader identity is more stable because it does not collapse whenever an uncomfortable emotion appears. You stop dividing yourself into acceptable and unacceptable parts and begin understanding that psychological maturity depends on holding opposing qualities in a conscious balance. Everything you rejected has been waiting not to punish you, but to be recognized. The shadow returns because the personality seeks wholeness, and wholeness cannot be achieved while entire regions of the self remain abandoned. Facing these hidden parts may produce discomfort, but avoiding them demands a lifetime of projection, repetition, and inner division. The doorway to freedom opens when you can look at what you once denied and say, "This too belongs to my story, and I am now conscious enough to decide what it will become." 4. Midlife is not a crisis. It is an invitation. Midlife often begins with a feeling that is difficult to explain. Nothing may be obviously wrong, yet the life that once felt meaningful suddenly appears incomplete. Familiar routines become mechanical, achievements lose their emotional power, and ambitions that once created excitement no longer provide direction. From the outside, everything may look stable. Inside, however, a quiet disorientation begins. This experience is commonly called a crisis, but from a Jungian perspective, it may be an invitation to enter a more conscious stage of life. The first half of life is generally directed outward. Its central tasks involve education, work, independence, relationships, social recognition, and the construction of a stable identity. These achievements help the ego establish itself in the world, and they deserve to be respected. But a life organized entirely around external progress eventually reaches a limit. What helped you build a position in society cannot automatically provide inner meaning. The psychological strategies that brought success in youth may become insufficient when the deeper personality begins demanding attention. This transformation can create confusion because the old motivations often weaken before new ones become clear. You may know that the previous direction no longer satisfies you without knowing what should replace it. That uncertain space can feel like failure because modern culture expects constant confidence, productivity, and progress. Yet inner development rarely follows such a predictable path. Before a new identity can emerge, the existing one must become less rigid. Confusion may therefore represent a transition between two ways of living rather than the absence of any direction. Regret frequently appears during this period. Choices made years earlier are reconsidered, missed opportunities become more visible, and unlived possibilities return to the imagination. It is tempting to interpret these reflections as proof that life was wasted, but regret can also reveal what the conscious personality neglected. The path not taken may symbolize a quality that still seeks expression: creativity, independence, courage, intimacy, or purpose. The past cannot be rewritten, but its emotional meaning can be understood and used to guide the years that remain. The awareness of time also changes. In youth, the future appears almost unlimited, allowing important desires to be postponed indefinitely. In midlife, time becomes more tangible, and this realization can expose how much energy has been spent living according to expectations. Such awareness is not meant to produce panic. It can clarify priorities. When you understand that your years are finite, superficial obligations begin to lose their authority, and the question of how you truly want to live becomes increasingly difficult to avoid. Jung believed that the second half of life requires a movement inward. This does not mean withdrawing permanently from responsibilities or abandoning the external world. It means balancing outer achievement with inner understanding. Dreams, emotions, memories, symbols, and recurring patterns become important sources of psychological information. Instead of asking only how to improve your circumstances, you begin asking what your experiences are trying to teach you. The objective shifts from building an impressive identity to developing a more complete relationship with yourself. Resistance often intensifies the suffering of this transition. If you insist on recreating the motivations of youth, you may chase increasingly larger achievements while receiving less satisfaction from them. You may attempt to recover an earlier version of yourself instead of discovering the person you are becoming. But the psyche does not necessarily want repetition. It may be asking for depth instead of expansion, meaning instead of recognition, and integration instead of performance. The discomfort grows when this invitation is repeatedly ignored. Accepting the invitation does not require an impulsive destruction of your existing life. Transformation can begin through careful reflection, honest conversations, creative expression, healthier boundaries, or the recovery of interests that were abandoned long ago. Sometimes an external change is necessary, but it should emerge from growing awareness rather than temporary desperation. The purpose is not to escape your life, it is to understand which parts remain authentic, which have completed their purpose, and which must now be transformed. As this process unfolds, emptiness can become space. The absence of an old direction creates room for values that were previously overshadowed by ambition and obligation. Relationships may become more honest, work may be evaluated according to meaning rather than status, and solitude may become an opportunity for inner dialogue. You begin measuring life less by accumulation and more by depth. The transition remains challenging, but it no longer appears meaningless once you recognize the psychological development taking place beneath it. Midlife becomes a true crisis only when its message is refused indefinitely. When approached consciously, it can become a turning point toward individuation, the lifelong process of becoming more fully yourself. The uncertainty is not necessarily asking you to return to who you were or immediately reinvent everything. It is asking you to listen, examine, and mature. What appears to be the collapse of your former direction may actually be the opening through which a deeper and more meaningful life is finally able to enter. 5. Let go of the life that no longer belongs to you. There are moments when the greatest obstacle to growth is not a lack of opportunity, but an unwillingness to release what has already completed its purpose. People often remain attached to careers, relationships, ambitions, and identities because these structures once provided meaning. They became evidence of effort, loyalty, and sacrifice. Yet something can have been important in the past without remaining right for the future. The difficulty lies in recognizing when devotion has become attachment and persistence has become fear of change. Letting go is painful because every established identity contains a story about who you are. If you have spent years being the dependable one, changing your priorities may feel selfish. If your worth has been connected to professional success, questioning your career may feel like losing your value. If a relationship has shaped an entire chapter of your life, accepting its transformation may feel like denying everything it once meant. We cling not only to circumstances, but also to the versions of ourselves those circumstances helped create. The ego prefers continuity because continuity provides a sense of control. It wants tomorrow to confirm yesterday and the future to reward every previous sacrifice. Life, however, does not promise that the direction which once served you will remain meaningful forever. Psychological development requires movement, and movement inevitably disrupts familiar structures. When the inner personality changes, but the outer life remains rigid, tension develops. You may continue performing the same responsibilities while feeling increasingly absent from your own existence. Outdated dreams can be especially difficult to release. A goal may have guided you for decades, shaping your decisions and sustaining you through hardship. But some dreams belong to an earlier stage of consciousness. They may have been built around the desire to impress a parent, prove your worth, defeat insecurity, or satisfy a cultural definition of success. Achieving them may no longer bring fulfillment because the person who originally needed them has changed. Continuing the pursuit can become an attempt to honor an identity that no longer represents you. The same is true of relationships. Not every connection is meant to remain unchanged throughout an entire lifetime. Some relationships deepen when both people are allowed to grow, while others depend on fixed roles and repeated patterns. Letting go does not always mean ending the connection. Sometimes it means releasing an unhealthy expectation, an old resentment, or the demand that another person remain who they once were. A relationship can survive transformation only when both individuals are permitted to become more honest versions of themselves. Jungian transformation frequently involves a symbolic ending before a psychological renewal. An identity must lose its absolute authority so that neglected parts of the personality can emerge. This ending may appear as uncertainty, grief, or the sensation of standing between two lives. The old one no longer fits, but the new one has not yet taken shape. Although this space feels uncomfortable, filling it immediately with another role or ambition can interrupt the deeper work. Sometimes you must remain in uncertainty long enough for a more authentic direction to appear. Surrender should not be confused with passivity or defeat. Conscious surrender is the recognition that some realities cannot be forced back into their former shape. It means ending the exhausting effort to control what has already changed. You stop demanding that an outdated dream provide meaning, that an unbalanced relationship become what it never was, or that a former identity carry you into a new stage of life. The energy once consumed by resistance becomes available for reflection, creativity, healing, and purposeful action. Letting go also requires grieving the future you once imagined. People do not mourn only what happened, they also mourn what they expected to happen, but never experienced. Unfulfilled plans, missed opportunities, and unrealized versions of the self can remain emotionally present for years. Acknowledging this grief allows the mind to process it instead of secretly organizing life around it. You can respect what you hoped for without making your remaining years responsible for fulfilling every promise made by your younger self. This process becomes easier when you stop measuring change as evidence of inconsistency. Growth naturally alters values, desires, and priorities. Remaining loyal to a former decision simply because you once made it can become a form of disloyalty to your present awareness. Maturity allows you to say that something was once right and is no longer right without turning either statement into a lie. Your past choices deserve understanding, but they do not possess permanent authority over your future. When you release the life that no longer belongs to you, you create space for a life that reflects who you are becoming. This does not guarantee immediate certainty or comfort. It offers something more valuable, the possibility of alignment between your inner truth and your outer existence. Letting go is not the erasure of your history. It is the transformation of your relationship with it. You carry forward its wisdom while setting down the roles, expectations, and ambitions that have become too small for the person now emerging. 6. Your greatest purpose is becoming whole. Many people enter life believing that their purpose is to become perfect. They try to eliminate weakness, avoid mistakes, control emotions, and construct an identity that cannot be criticized. This pursuit may create discipline and achievement, but it also divides the personality. Everything considered admirable is displayed, while everything considered unacceptable is hidden. Jung offered a different goal, not perfection, but wholeness, the capacity to recognize, integrate, and take responsibility for the full reality of who you are. Wholeness does not mean that every inner conflict disappears. It means that you become conscious of the different forces operating within you. Strength and vulnerability, reason and emotion, independence and connection, confidence and uncertainty can coexist within the same personality. When one side is denied, the rejected opposite does not vanish. It begins influencing life unconsciously. Becoming whole requires enough inner maturity to hold these contradictions without forcing yourself into a narrow and artificial identity. The conscious mind represents only part of the psyche. It contains the thoughts, memories, values, and intentions that you can recognize directly. Beneath it lies the unconscious, where forgotten experiences, rejected qualities, emotional patterns, instincts, dreams, and symbolic images continue to operate. Jung believed that psychological development depends upon establishing a relationship between these two dimensions. When the conscious and unconscious remain separated, a person may repeatedly act from motives they do not understand. This separation explains why external success can coexist with inner emptiness. A person may achieve every visible objective while remaining disconnected from the deeper needs of the personality. Recognition cannot integrate the shadow. Wealth cannot answer every question of meaning. Status cannot create peace between conflicting parts of the psyche. Outer accomplishments become truly valuable when they express an integrated life, but they become hollow when they are used to avoid the inner work that success alone cannot complete. The process of becoming whole begins with attention. Recurring emotions, dreams, conflicts, and patterns are not treated as meaningless disturbances, but as possible messages from neglected parts of the self. Instead of immediately suppressing discomfort, you ask what it may be revealing. Instead of blaming circumstances for every repeated difficulty, you examine your own participation. This attitude does not make you responsible for everything that happens, but it allows you to become responsible for the psychological meaning you create from experience. Integration transforms fear, because what is consciously recognized becomes less mysterious. You may discover that a fear of judgment conceals a desire to express yourself, or that resentment conceals a boundary you have repeatedly failed to defend. Loneliness may reveal a need for a deeper relationship with yourself, while restlessness may indicate that your life has become disconnected from your values. When these emotions are understood, they stop being mere obstacles and become guides toward aspects of life requiring attention. The self, in Jungian psychology, represents the organizing center and greater totality of the personality. It includes the conscious ego while extending beyond it. The ego asks how it can preserve control, maintain its image, and obtain what it desires. The self asks what allows the entire personality to develop. These demands are not always identical. A choice that protects the ego's status may restrict inner growth, while an experience that challenges the ego may create greater balance, awareness, and meaning. Becoming whole, therefore, requires humility. You must accept that the conscious mind does not possess complete knowledge of who you are or what you need. Life can reveal qualities that contradict your self-image and limitations that ambition cannot overcome. Humility allows you to receive this information without collapsing into shame or defensiveness. You stop treating every imperfection as evidence of failure and begin viewing it as part of the unfinished human material from which wisdom can emerge. As wholeness develops, your relationships also change. You become less likely to demand that other people carry the qualities you refuse to acknowledge in yourself. You can admire someone without turning them into an ideal and disagree without making them an enemy. Because you are more conscious of your own contradictions, you become capable of seeing others with greater complexity. Connection becomes less dependent on projection, performance, and expectation, creating space for honesty and mutual responsibility. Your greatest purpose is not to construct a flawless version of yourself that never doubts, struggles, or changes. It is to become conscious enough to live without abandoning essential parts of your nature. Wholeness means bringing light to what was hidden, wisdom to what was feared, and compassion to what was rejected. It is not a final state reached once and forever, but a lifelong relationship with the totality of your being. In that relationship, life becomes more than a search for success. It becomes the gradual realization of who you were capable of becoming. 7. Before you enter the second half of your life, remember this. Before you enter the second half of your life, remember that time does not merely take things away. It reveals what was always important. The passing years strip false priorities of their power and expose the difference between what impressed others and what genuinely nourished your inner life. Titles fade, possessions change hands, and recognition is quickly replaced by someone else's achievement. What remains is the person you became while pursuing these things, and whether your choices allowed your soul to participate in the life you lived. You do not need to condemn the first half of your life in order to enter the second with greater awareness. Every ambition, error, sacrifice, relationship, and disappointment contributed to the consciousness you now possess. Even the years spent fulfilling expectations taught you what happens when your inner voice is ignored. The past becomes a prison only when you believe you must continue repeating it. When understood honestly, it becomes material from which wisdom can be created. There will always be reasons to postpone authenticity. Someone may be disappointed, circumstances may remain imperfect, and certainty may never arrive. If you wait until fear disappears before making a meaningful choice, you may spend the remaining years preparing to live rather than living. Courage is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the willingness to move carefully and honestly, even when the entire path cannot be seen. A mature life is built through conscious steps, not through perfect guarantees. Remember that not everything deserves to be carried forward. Old resentments, inherited expectations, impossible standards, and outdated identities consume energy that could be used to create meaning. You are allowed to stop defending a version of yourself that no longer feels true. You are allowed to change your mind, revise your priorities, and release dreams that belong to an earlier consciousness. Letting go does not mean that those years were meaningless. It means that you have listened to what they came to teach you. You must also stop waiting for other people to authorize your transformation. Some will understand your growth, while others will prefer the familiar role you once performed. Their discomfort cannot be the final authority over your life. You can consider their feelings without surrendering your inner direction. The second half of life demands a deeper form of responsibility, accepting that your choices belong to you and that no amount of approval can replace the peace of living in alignment with your values. Mortality gives meaning to this responsibility. Knowing that life is limited does not have to create despair. It can awaken attention. A finite day becomes precious because it cannot be repeated. An ordinary conversation becomes meaningful because no relationship should be taken for granted. The awareness of time can return you to the present, where life is actually happening. Instead of treating each day as preparation for some future moment, you begin recognizing that this moment is part of the life you once hoped to live. The years ahead may ask you to exchange expansion for depth. You may become less interested in collecting experiences and more interested in understanding them. You may prefer a few honest relationships to a large audience, meaningful work to impressive status, and inner peace to endless competition. This is not a retreat from life. It is a refinement of attention, a conscious decision to invest your remaining energy in what possesses genuine psychological and spiritual value. Do not be afraid of becoming unfamiliar to yourself. Growth often feels disorienting because the old identity cannot accompany you unchanged into every new stage. The person emerging may be quieter, braver, more selective, or less willing to perform for acceptance. Give that person room to develop. You are not required to remain consistent with every expectation formed before you understood yourself. Your deepest responsibility is to become conscious of the life that is still trying to unfold through you. Jung's message for the second half of life is ultimately a call toward individuation. The goal is not to become isolated, flawless, or permanently certain, but to become more whole. This means facing the shadow, loosening identification with the persona, listening to the unconscious, and allowing your outer choices to reflect your inner truth. The journey does not remove every contradiction. It teaches you to meet those contradictions with awareness, humility, and the courage to continue developing. Before you cross this threshold, remember that the most meaningful part of your life may not be behind you. The first half taught you how to establish yourself in the world. The second can teach you how to belong to yourself. Stop merely preserving what you have built and begin listening to what your deeper nature is asking you to become. Your remaining years are not an epilogue. They are an invitation to live with greater presence, choose with greater honesty, and finally become an active participant in your own existence.